Hey everyone, uh, just give me 1 second. We are getting everything set up. Hey everyone. Let me know in the chat if anybody is facing any issues or anything, if they're not able to hear me clearly. Uh, cool, that's awesome. Cool, so I think it's just about time, so we'll give it a couple more minutes before we get started. Before we start, if anybody has any sort of questions, feel free to just type them in the chat. During the session, I'll try and take as many questions from the chat as much as possible. Uh, but once we wrap up, we'll definitely cover all the questions that I might have missed during the conversation. So feel free to drop the questions whenever you feel ready. And yeah, let's get them started. All right, let me switch over. 1 second. All right, hope you guys can see the deck now. I'll give it just a couple of seconds to load. Oh, there you go. All right, awesome. So yeah, so today's session mainly is about people who are interested in game development professionally as a career. Um, so predominantly, uh, we want to focus on people interested in game development who want to pursue this professionally, um, who don't are just limited to building games as a hobby. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's a lot of interest in the community around people who want to work in this industry as well. So this session is predominantly focused towards that. Even if you are a hobby developer, there is a lot of technical and non-technical learnings as well that you can take. So stick around. It'll help you develop your skill set, no matter what career you choose, because there's a lot of overlap, not just in gaming, but any kind of professional career that you want to choose for. Hi, cool. So a little bit about me. My career started 10 years back. It started in technology, not in gaming, and since then, starting I think first 2 3 years, I worked in finance industry. Was doing technical work there as well, a lot with Perl, Python, those kind of technologies, and after that, switched over in the last 7 to 8 years. Switched over to gaming full time. So these are some of the companies from a very high level that I've worked with across different countries, and this is just a short selection of. Over the years, I've consulted with a lot of different companies on a lot of different projects, and mm, some of these names you might know. Some of them are slightly smaller ones, but more niche. Kicksai's one that used to be very popular back in 2010. Around that time, their games were getting very popular. They're not very popular nowadays, so some of our younger audience might not know about them. Electronic Arts, EA being a classic as well. They make a lot of games. FIFA, probably one of the most popular, or the general sports lineup is one of the most popular ones. So yeah, these are some of the studios that I've worked with in the past and have a lot of extensive experience both building single player experiences, multiplayer experiences, and whatnot, and pretty much everything in between, be it console games, be it mobile games, be it hobby web games as well. So that's a little bit about me. The topics that today we're going to cover briefly are in these buckets. So we'll touch a little bit upon what I mean by soft skills and how that can help you become better, irrespective of your professional career that you might want to take in, be it gaming, be it non-gaming, oriented, this is something that applies to pretty much everyone. Hard skills are more relevant to developers and generally game developers, but again, a lot of them are generic across different verticals. So tomorrow, if you want to be a web developer or an Android developer, a good 80% of the topics that we'll cover as part of hard skills would still be applicable to you, and you can still benefit from them. Um, and after that, I'll briefly cover what currently I'm working on, which is a company called Outscal that started last year, and how potentially young developers, like most of our current audience, can actually benefit from the programs that we have here. And in the end, we'll just take up a lot more questions as well. So soft skills. Let me quickly take a peek if there is anything in the chat. Um, so Shaurya asked, tell me something about your EA experience. So EA was a sort of a specific project that I was working on. So at that time, this was back in 2013. EA wanted to explore more of how they can evolve their origin platform, which is very similar to Steam, but does not have a lot of audience. So um, the whole idea of EA was they wanted to try and build multiple games where games are deeply linked to each other. So you play one game, based on that you unlock certain rewards in other games and vice versa. So how we can encourage a more robust ecosystem and have that same community around Steam. But uh, that didn't plan out in the long run. It was a very heavy project, so Origin isn't that great even now. Cool. So going over back to soft skills now. So what I mean by soft skills when I say is essentially anything that uh, involves predominantly nothing to do with technical skills, but how do you interact? How do you communicate? How do you present yourself? Be it online, be it offline, in person, on a phone call, when you meet somebody at a conference, all those things are encompassed inside soft skills. And I see this is the biggest um, shortcoming that developers have today. They just don't know how to present themselves, how to position themselves in order to succeed in their careers. And this is common not just in gaming, but especially it's really shortcoming of game developers because it's a very small community. You don't get to learn too often from senior experienced people in this community that much as you might expect. So this is something that personally developers should be very attentive to and start building right from the get-go. There's no age for starting building soft skills. So coming to some more specifics, LinkedIn, as you know, it's a professional network and it's really important that you appear professional. Um, so especially when you're talking to somebody who's a potential mentor, a potential employer, a company, an HR, always behave in a professional manner, even though the person in front of you might be your age or maybe even junior to you, right? That doesn't mean that they're your friends. So while it's great to make friends in the industry, but when you're reaching out to people, always appear professional. Always introduce yourself. Always let them know why you're reaching out to them, right? One of the biggest examples that I can give you is I get over 30 to 40 LinkedIn connection requests from students, game developers, either looking to start their career or looking for some training, mentor, guidance. And they send me a request, and I'm happy to help as many as I can, but they don't even include a single message in the request. So if I'm getting 40 to 50 messages a day, am I going to figure out, looking at your profile, what you might be interested in learning or what you are connecting with me for? Did I ask you, we met somewhere, and did I ask you to connect with me, or are you reaching out because you graduated from the same university I went to? Whatever it is, always include that context. Otherwise, I have a very high tendency, and in general, professional people don't have that much time to go and sit through people that they're asking to get connected with, to figure out why they are asking to get you connected to them, right? So always include a message, and this avoids the biggest problem that people will start marking you otherwise spam, and LinkedIn will start blocking your requests, which is an even bigger problem. So uh, please be very attentive around this. Same thing kind of applies to emails as well. Whenever you're communicating, whenever you're sending to, say, an HR, or when you're replying to like an interview request that comes in from a company, always write every email as if this is your first communication. Always, address who you're talking to. If you are talking to directly a person, even you might be sending an email to say something like an hr@xyzcompany.com. If you know the person that you're addressing, always address them by name, because then it's easy for that person to pick up that email and respond to you, and you also have that direct point of contact. Don't just send like the biggest uh, thing that I see young developers and pretty much young students make is they just send an email saying resume in the subject and just attaching a resume. Um, Companies are typically hiring for multiple roles at one time. And if they're getting anywhere upwards of 100 resumes a week, do you really think they're going to sit and figure out, looking at your resume, whether you're applying for a technical internship or an HR internship or a senior developer position or the head of marketing? No, they don't have that much time, right? So do not make their life difficult to hire you. Make it as easy as possible. Be clear, be consistent. Make sure your subject includes what kind of things you want them to know about you, right? Are you applying for an internship? Are you applying for a full time role? Include that specific role. Let them know how you found out about it, if somebody referred you to it. All those little details matter a lot, and that's where people miss out the most. So make sure your communication in that aspect is super clear. Resume, again, this is a no-brainer. Everybody has one. Every company requests one, but the biggest thing that people fail at is making concise resumes. Um, People think that I need to include everything that I've done ever on my resume because this is the thing that will get me the job. Uh, and you couldn't be further away from the truth. The whole goal of your resume is to get you your first interview, whether that's with an HR, whether that's with an engineering manager, it doesn't matter. The only point of your resume is to get you to that first interview. And for that, it needs to be to the point, precise, and concise. Unless you're somebody who has 25 years of experience, your resume should not be more than one page. That's pretty much a hard line. Like, no 5-page resumes. I do not want full, nobody has time to sit through and read through 5 pages of resume of every project and every Olympiad that you might have appeared in, and etc. Keep it concise, keep it most relevant information at the top. Uh, Say if you're applying for an Android developer position, but last 2-3 years, or most recent, you're working on something different. But in your previous years, you may have worked on some projects in the Android development space itself. Highlight those at the top, even though they're not something that's relevant for most recent, right? So make your resume cater to companies that you're applying to, the job positions that you're applying to. That way, you will boost your own chances of getting shortlisted for that first interview call and potentially convert that into an actual hire, right? So be concise and be precise. Those are the two things that you want to focus on when it comes to resume. There are a lot of online services that let you sort of tweak your resume, but these are very generic templates. They're good to start with, but always customize it to fit the skill set that you bring to the table and fit, uh, the kind of job that you're applying to, whether it be tech, non-tech, HR, whatever it might be. And last but not the least, know the company that you're applying for. Um, there are so many people that get rejected in the first 1 minute of their interview, because when the person who's interviewing you will ask you, hey, what do you know about our company? right? If you make mobile games, have you played any games? Or do you know about what kind of games we make? And the answer is no, right? Like that is the biggest reason that will get you rejected for any potential job, even if you are highly, appropriate. Your skill set is highly appropriate for that particular job. Always be prepared for any such email conversation, such interview process. Always know which company you're applying for, what work they do. The more you know about them, the better your odds are, because then during your conversations you can, give them references. So one particular example was, I was some 5 years back, I was applying for another job opportunity, and this was a completely distributed team. So their developers were spread across 5 different continents, not a single headquarters physical office, and had been through their entire blog post, read every blog position that they had, and during my HR call, was able to reference that, oh, hey, yeah, I know you're working on this particular thing. I read this in your blog post, seems highly relevant. And by the way, this is all the things that I've done in the past, and this is how it matches to your current thing that you're doing. So you're able to relate yourself to the company and show that you have done your homework as well. This is the most this is the easiest thing that you can score points on when it comes to getting selected in the interview process, and this is the most obvious one that people fail at. It hardly takes half an hour to 1 hour to research a company before you jump on an interview call, and this is the most common one that developers, especially developers, miss out on. Other positions they're still relatively good at when it comes to doing these kind of things, but when it comes to developers, they somehow have a understanding that, hey, my technical skill set is the one that's going to get judged the most, so I should ramp up on my C++, or I should ramp up on my Java, or whatever skill set that you're currently interviewing for. But trust me when I say this, that even for your technical interviews, more than 50% of the things that you're getting graded on is your soft skills, how you actually answer things, and not exactly what the answer is. Most of the times companies are not looking for your exact answers, but can you actually explain your thought process? Do you know what you're talking about? And if I ask a question slightly different, can you able to explain that? So communication skills, soft skills are super important. So keep practicing these, be it through mock interviews, taking guidance from your seniors in colleges, asking them to interview for dummy job positions before you actually apply for interviews at potential companies that you want to get working for. So those kind of things really matter, and you can do a lot to help yourself, prepare yourself for these particular things. Cool. So I think that pretty much brings us to our next topic for today, which is hard skills. So when I say hard skills, it's predominantly relating to the technical skills that you bring to the table. So if a company is hiring for an Android developer, of course they are looking for somebody who's worked predominantly in the Android ecosystem, knows about how to build Android apps, and what is the differences between building in Java and Kotlin and new kind of technology. So all those things kind of fall broadly under the umbrella of hard skills. So when it comes to acquiring hard skills while you are in college, um, so colleges usually are very generic in nature, and while that's great in order to encourage people to learn a broad set of things, they aren't really very good at making sure that when you graduate, you have a certain amount of skill set that's applicable to a specific industry. That is super important, and that is what usually is missing in most of the developers these days. A lot of the companies nowadays are hiring for certain specific type of skills. So say they want young game developers. They want to work with, let's say, Android developers, or embedded system developers, whatever it may be. These are specific roles. Even companies that you would see are, they have job postings like a generic software developer or a software developer one kind of, the entry level kind of a software developer. Even they would have a certain uh, uh, limitation in terms of the kind of skill set they're usually looking for. So if they're predominantly working on the server side, they might be looking for people who have basic knowledge of JavaScript or say Java for building servers and backend services. So usually there is some set of skill set that companies do need even when they project a general software development kind of your job postings for young developers. So for those also, I would recommend that you first know the company. Again, going back to the previous point, right? Know the company. If you're applying to an XYZ company and they're asking for general software developers, you should know the technologies that they're already working on. This is not a secret that you cannot Google and find out, or not that you can approach a couple of their engineers through LinkedIn or whatever and figure out what skill sets or what technologies they're working on. So at least you should be aware of them. If you're not a master, no, as an engineer, as a young engineer, nobody expects you to be a master of these skill sets already, but you should be comfortable enough or you should be prepared enough to either go in and learn these technologies, or you should have a basic understanding of at least what these technologies are used for. So there are a lot of online, if you want to go deeper into it, right? You want to start learning, there are a lot of online resources. And now going back to specifically game development, there are a lot of YouTube channels out there that have courses slash, topic specific content around Unity itself, right? How to build games in Unity. Some take a more tutorialish approach where they release a bunch of videos. Others take a topic, create a video about it. So both kind of things work kind of well. One specific channel that I would like to highlight is there's unity3d.college, a specific website, and the same guy runs his own Unity channel by that same name. So I highly encourage you guys to look it up. It's very coding oriented. He has short videos, a lot of great content. Definitely check it out. And if you want to take your coding skills to the next level, if you have already a base understanding of what Unity is, what C# coding is inside Unity, this is the essential skill set that will take you from that beginner level, hey, I can make a simple roll a ball game in 48 hours, to yes, I can actually build a level based game in a week, right? So the skill sets here are really important. Then there are a lot of open communities as well. Discord is very popular for hosting a lot of these communities, especially around gaming and game development. Brackeys again is a very popular YouTuber around Unity itself. He has a pretty healthy Discord server that I would encourage you guys to join. It's a very community-oriented approach, and you can ask your technical questions if you're working on a project, and the community is very good that they respond pretty quickly. Um, Always encourage young developers to join game jams, hackathons, these weekend kind of programs. Good thing about them, they usually are like over the weekends, start Friday evening, end Monday morning or Sunday evening, something like that. So, even if you have your college, or if you're working somewhere full time, whatever it may be, these are always still good for people who want to meet new people, get their creative juices flowing. So highly encourage these irrespective of how much experience you have. If you have zero experience or you have 10 experience, game jams and hackathon is highly recommended. There are a lot of these online learning platforms, Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, and many more, which already have a lot of Unity development courses available as well. And I'm sure most of you guys would have already checked out some of these courses and probably even completed some of these courses, and they're great. The So they're good to get you started, but when it comes to taking your skill level to an industry level, right, like what typically you would expect to deliver in a good company as a young developer, they aren't that great, because a lot of them purely focus on introduction to a certain topic. They start from zero and take you to maybe 20%, right? But there is still that remaining missing 80% of how do you actually write production quality code, right? What does it mean when 10 people are working in a project on a game for 6 months, right? Those kind of projects look very different from typically the kind of projects that you work on while you're doing some courses on Coursera or Udemy, right? Those The level of complexity, the amount of collaboration that is needed is very different. So take these courses, be it free, be it paid, but understand that they're going to only give you a platform to start your learning journey in these particular things. But there is a big hole after that that you still need to bridge. Um, and that's where we sort of come in. I've been working in this space for a long time and have been on the hiring side a lot. One biggest problem that I see is that 80% that I just talked about is usually missing in developers. um, so the idea when we started Outscale last year was to actually take developers who have a basic understanding of certain technologies and actually, in a short burst of time, give them the right kind of exposure in order to get them ready for these industries and be able to go to a company and actually be in a position to showcase your skill set best, so that you can demand a company come to you rather than going and be like, hey, this is the only job I got, so I'll just have to take it, right? So that's where kind of the training programs that we provide kind of fit in. So the first one that we started is basically called full stack game development program. uh, Typically, if you look at any gaming oriented trainings or courses and whatnot, they're all focused on a game engine, right? So they're focused on Unity, for instance, or some might be focused on Unreal, or others might be focused on some of the other open source engines, or maybe Cocos 2D, any of these kind of things. One thing to note though is that Unity is just an engine. If you're a if you're a good game developer, your game development skills should not be married to Unity alone. Yes, Unity has a big market right now. A lot of games are made with Unity. A lot of companies are using Unity. But 10 years back, Unity was nowhere on the scene, right? People were still making games. They were using other engines, some proprietary, some open source, right? 10 years from now, Unity might not be there in the scene again, right? But if you want to continue developing games, your skills should translate to more than what just Unity is. So while it's good to understand what tools Unity provides, but it's very important for a game developer to be able to build games even when they are taken from Unity and asked to develop, say, games in Unreal, or asked to develop games in JavaScript, or asked to develop games in Cocos 2D, right? Because the same philosophies of building games, right? Those skill sets should still translate very well. 80% actual knowledge should actually still translate. The reason why we call it full stack is, if you look at today's games, there's hardly any game that does not have a multiplayer component, right? Even if you're building a single player game, there is still a backend server that you're communicating with, right? To save your progress, to make in-app purchases, or to get new ad requests or whatnot, right? Some games you could use some third-party stuff to not develop your own server, use Unity services and whatnot. But there is still a backend server that your game is still connecting to. So full stack in the sense makes sure that you have understanding of not just the client that runs on a mobile device or on a console, but actually have an understanding of how to go about building simple backend servers. And this becomes really important when it comes to multiplayer games. So during our training program, of course, we use Unity 3D as our client-side engine because that's what most devs are comfortable with. And frankly, it's very good to get started, even if you don't know a specific engine to prototype certain games. It's pretty easy to get started with Unity using C Sharp. On the server side, a lot of our focus goes towards building simple servers um, for the Node.js environment. If you're not familiar with this, this is a JavaScript environment that lets you build servers relatively quickly, and helps you get started with building even simple multiplayer games. So by the end of the curriculum, the goal is that if you go to a company and the company asks you that, hey, we need to get a quick multiplayer game working, you should be able to get both a client and a server set up by yourself, and have the entire game be playable. Of course, this is not the setup is not something that will scale to 1 million users, but the idea is that you should be in a state that you can prototype these things out. Uh, we're not saying that you'll become an advanced level user in Node.js or an advanced level Unity developer as well, but this will get you with the right kind of thought process of how to think about building games when it comes to building complex games, right? So those are the key skill set, that thinking approach of solving problems when building large scale games. That's important. So an example, you'll be working a lot on projects. So during our training program, a lot of emphasis goes towards building projects. Everything from day one, you'll start working on projects. Some of your exercises would be based on pair programming. So you'll be working with other developers to program a specific module in a game, or you might be actually building a full game from scratch with your other teammates as well. So everything is revolved around projects only. There is no tutorial. There's no kind of theoretical learning that's needed. You'll cover a topic, and then you'll jump straight into a project and actually implement that particular topic. So Hitman Go game, it's a puzzle-based game. If you're not familiar with it, just feel free to Google it quickly. It's a puzzle-based, level-based game where you're moving a hitman across the board, much like a chess piece. You move a chess piece around, and you have to avoid the guards or kill the guards, and eventually assassinate a target to finish a level. Uh, so during our previous training programs, one of our dev teams actually built a Hitman Go version of it. Within 2 weeks, they were able to take the entire game to 10 different types of enemies, with each having their own unique behavior. Some having a dog that's chasing you around, others moving around a specific trajectory, and 10 different levels, with each with different mechanics and whatnot. So this might sound simple, but I can bet you that without the right skill set, without the right amount of thought process, this project will become a nightmare, and it will take you more than 6 months to implement it without using the right techniques. And even then, there will be so many bugs that you'll be pretty much just abandoning the project by the end of it. Um, and again, going back to building both client and servers, a lot of our focus goes towards building multiplayer games, which means building either asynchronous games or even building multiplayer real-time games, right? So your typical PUBG kind of experiences, right? So if there is time by the end of the training process, you will have the opportunity to even build a real-time multiplayer game. Even though we typically do not cover a real-time multiplayer game, because implementing these definitely take way more time, but we do cover building asynchronous, say, turn-based kind of games as well, right? So uh, some of the examples, like if you have a card-based game, right, Uno or any kind of those games are typically examples of real-time turn-based game, or even real-time multiplayer games would be basically like your racing games or anything like that. But you will have a good understanding of both, how to build asynchronous games which have more turn-based mechanics, or how to build more real-time multiplayer games. And of course, like I mentioned, everything is focused around team projects. So team is the key. Nothing happens solo. Once you're in the industry, once you're working with good companies, you're mostly going to be working with mid to big size teams as well. Sometimes you might be in a small team, but those are usually for experimentation purposes, prototyping purposes, and that's great. But when it comes to production level projects, none of the projects are done by a solo one engineer, at least at good companies. So you should know how to kind of work and collaborate within the same project with multiple engineers, with potentially designers, potentially artists, and producers and program managers and whatnot. So the whole training is basically designed along a real world work experience. How typically you would actually, if you were already working in a company, what kind of exposure can you expect, or what kind of workflows you can expect, is what essentially we're focused on. And this kind of bridges that 80% gap between what developers usually know and what the industry usually expects them to know. So that's where you bridge the gap. Um, of course, once you finish the training, it's followed by our career services thing, where we actually help you prepare for uh, interviews with companies as well. So we already have a lot of companies that partner with us. Um, our previous batches got placed pretty much within the first 15 days itself of finishing the training, but uh, that can vary depending on who's hiring, how long usually their hiring process is, and how available you are. If you're a college student, you might not be available to take up a job immediately, right? So you might have to wait maybe a little bit. So it purely depends on that. As for the other pieces, so there's two things that we do when it comes to the fees for the training program, right? Um, the first that we are doing is something new in this industry, especially the training kind of setup, is called an income share agreement. What this means is that after our selection process, if we are happy with the level of knowledge and how you've performed in your selection process, be it in your coding challenge, be it in your interview process, um, then we offer you the chance to basically go through this 3 month training program for zero cost, basically. So you don't have to pay us anything um, till the time you basically start working, till the time you get a job. And only after you get a job, then only you are expected to pay us back over the course of a few months uh, some percentage amount, and it's structured more like a typical education loan, except that let's say if you take an education loan for your bachelor's, BTech, or whatever, once you finish your BTech at the end of fourth year, the bank comes and start asking you for your EMIs, right? But for us, um, we invest in our students so much that we say that you don't need to pay us till the time you get a job. So if you graduate and for the next 3 months you don't have a job, right, you're not liable to pay us during that time. Once you start earning, that's the only time when you start paying. That way you become more independent. You don't have to ask your parents to spend more money as well on your education, and you can repay your own cost for the training as well. So this is a new innovative thing that we're doing for our developers, provided that you can clear our quality standards when it comes to our selection process for this particular training. The other is, of course, a much more standard structure where there is an upfront cost, and if you want to take the training and you haven't cleared our qualification criteria, you can, provided you'll have to basically pay the fee upfront. But we still want to make sure that the what you are getting into, be it on an income share agreement, be it on upfront payment, whatever it is, right? We want to make sure that you get to experience that this is the right fit for you. And because it's a very intense hands-on program, we've seen people not able to cope up with it. And So you need to be mentally, physically prepared to commit a lot of time to it, especially to our full-time version of the program, because the assignments are pretty intense, but at the same time, your learning experience will also be intense. So what we do is basically we give our first week of training for free. So for the first week, uh, people who have signed up for the course, we take them through the selection process, and people who are selected can take the entire first week for free. So that gives them a taste of what it is this training is all about, how we do things. Are they learning? Is this something that is a right fit for them? And if you feel that this is a good fit for you, then only you have to make a choice between the two options, which one you would like to go for. And to know more about these two options, you can just go to our website, outscal.com, and in our program details section, since we offer multiple different trainings as well, so you can see all the details there in terms of what these numbers are for each particular training. So I'll not go into the details of those because they're already listed very much on our website. So please check that out after this particular call. Cool. So a lot of our effort is focused around building games, but in a very open source manner. So if you go to github.com/outscale, you can see a lot of the past projects that the developers from our previous batches have worked on as well. A lot of your training assignments are already set up there as well. Um, they won't make much sense to you now because you don't know what exactly you'll be working on. But there are two key repositories that you need to focus on if you're interested in this particular development training program. The first one is called Pre-Course Full Stack Game Development. So anybody who is just getting started in game development or wants to build or wants to get started in game development, this repository is nothing but a collection of very useful resources. Some of these resources are blogs, others are YouTube video tutorials, some reading materials, references of other books, are all organized in a more sequential manner that you can get started. So essentially, it's a way for you to get started as a game developer. And predominantly, this is the prerequisite for you to even appear for our coding challenge. So the second repository is called Game Development Challenge. And this repository is also there. You can go and read what the challenge is. And anybody, either if you're applying for a full-time job with us as a game developer, or you're applying for the training program, if you're currently already in school or just graduated, everybody has to do this challenge. This is how we get a sense of where your skill level is. And for this, in order for you to succeed in this game development challenge, going through the content of pre-course is very important. You can skip the pre-course if you feel confident, but I would still highly recommend that you look through the Unity spec section at least. The other things would definitely be covered in your interview process. So if you skip those now, make sure you do revise them during your interview process, before your interview process, basically, because your technical interviews will cover those things as well. So if you're ready, if you already have the right skill set, feel free to jump into the game dev challenge today. I'll just go over the dates as well. And but the idea is that go through the pre-course first, make sure that you understand all those topics before you jump into doing the challenge. So here are some of the dates for our next game development batch. So the first deadline for submitting the challenge will be this coming Sunday, which is 16th June. So today is Wednesday, 4 days from now. This should give students enough time to prepare and actually do the coding challenge. The challenge is all there on the same repository. The instructions for submitting the challenge is already there as well, so please follow those instructions carefully. Once you have submitted it to us by Sunday night maximum, uh, uh, you'll get a request for interview, for scheduling an interview on the 18th, which is Tuesday. And by the end of the week on Friday, the 21st, next Friday, basically, you'll get a confirmation email or a call from us confirming your spot for the training program. And the Monday after that, which is the 24th of June, is when we officially kickstart the batch. So again, seats are limited. So people who can finish the coding challenge before the 16th, great, they'll have first priority in terms of the interview process. But after the first deadline, if you're not able to make it, still try and get us your coding challenges next week. But in that case, if the batch gets full, then we won't be able to accommodate you at least for this batch. But you can still go through the interview process and be applicable for our next coming batches. So typically, when you're going through this particular training after you have been selected, then a typical schedule would look something like this. So 10 to 11:30, there will be a live class, which will basically go over a certain topic Monday to Friday every day, and we'll cover a certain topic, a more intermediate to an advanced level topic, and that will be followed by either a project that's currently ongoing or a pair programming exercise that's currently going. So you'll be paired with, say, another batchmate in your current cohort, and you'll be working with that person to implement that particular assignment, module, or project, or whatever pieces that we're currently working on. Then we meet again in the evening, again on live through video calls, and we do a quick code review of all the solutions, different solutions that people have presented, and kind of like a group discussion, discuss the different approaches that people took to solve a particular problem that was the focus for the day. And after that, if somebody needs more time to finish their coding challenges, and they can continue working on that, or you can jump on to next day's reading material. So whatever is the topic that's going to be covered, every day will have associated reading materials and extra resources that you can use to learn. So you can either start preparing for those, or if you're lagging behind from the current day, you can continue focusing on improving those things. So that's typically a day schedule looks like. Saturday and Sunday are open, so you can continue brushing up your own things or practicing other things that you might feel the need for. So that's predominantly it for now. We'll be launching a weekend/evening only classes kind of a structure as well in sometime mid-August. The exact dates are to be announced. And this is predominantly to accommodate people uh, who will be going into their fourth year. Um, so, if you're already, say, in an internship or already have a full-time commitment and you cannot join this particular full-time batch, then you can still go through the interview process now and reserve a spot for the August batch, basically. So that way you can even continue going back to your course or classes or whatever you are doing, be it your seventh semester or something, and in parallel you can start focusing on building. So instead of a 3 month, that might get extended to a more of a 5 month duration as well. And also we have plans for launching full stack web development training programs, as well as Android and iOS development training programs. So a lot of these new courses, once they get launched, their timelines and usually get announced on LinkedIn first. So you can follow this link to subscribe to our LinkedIn page for Outscale, or just go to directly our website. Our website is basically www.outscale.com. You can navigate to our LinkedIn page there. So if anything that during your coding challenge or anytime you have any questions regarding the admission process or anything not clear, a lot of the questions are already answered on our FAQ section. So feel free to directly first read up there, and if still you feel like there is something that you don't have clarity on, just drop us an email on admissions@outscale.com. And if you're a senior engineer, or a senior engineer who's looking for a new job opportunities, feel free to ask them to drop a mail at careers@outscale.com. So that pretty much covers more or less what we wanted to talk about today. So If you have any questions, just feel free to drop them um, in the chat. I'll quickly just go through um, the questions if there are any that people have posted already. So let me just take a look at this. Uh, you can have Q&A. So someone asked, what are the qualifications required for EA and Junglee Games? See, companies usually keep changing their requirements, so it's uh, you, you should directly usually refer to their website in order to understand what kind of positions they're hiring for and what kind of things that they're looking for. So um, typically, for game developers, they'd ask for, what kind of projects have you worked on before and those kind of things. So those kind of things are usually important. So just try and go through their career sections, and you'll probably get a good sense of what they're basically looking for in particular when they're hiring for that particular role. Bhaskaran says, is this only for game development? So a lot of the topics that I covered, like I mentioned early on in the conversation, that is not specific to game development only, but at least the soft skill section and everything, covers spans across multiple different verticals. So be it any other domain, this is still highly relevant. But yes, technical definitely, more hard skills definitely more related to game development and C sharp. So Anoop asked, what are some of the salary figures for Unity game developers? So Anoop, that's a very broad question, and usually there is no standard answer. Um, the whole idea is, that salaries are very subject to change from time to time, and depending on company, it'll change as well. So you got to kind of figure out where you are applying, what kind of skill set you add to the table, what kind of previous experiences that you have. So those things usually matter a lot. So there isn't a standard answer for salaries. Rajat asked, from your previous batches, what is the average package? So from our previous things that we have seen so far is for young developers with ideally like a 0 years experience before, who have gone through this particular program. Um, we're looking at salaries roughly in the range of 6 to 7 lakhs per annum. That usually is the average mark. Some have been offered much more than that as well. So that is something what you can expect typically from this particular thing. Anup asked, can a PUBG-like game be made by a single person? So Anup, it purely depends on what do you mean by that, because um, can you prototype that game? Sure, you can build a quick multiplayer version of it, but can you add the same amount of mechanics, the world, the complexity, and everything else? Probably not in a decent amount of time. If you sit and do that alone, it might take you 3 4 years to get to that level, and even then you might not have achieved exactly the same quality, right? Because one person cannot do all the things. But if you're talking from purely from a code perspective, sure, the core mechanics of implementing that battle arena sorry, that whole mechanic, the timer, the area shrinking and whatnot, right? Like all those elements, absolutely you can. The core prototype, I feel like one person with the right skill set can actually get it done in 2 weeks. So that's not the challenge. The challenge is actually make it playable in a way that people can actually enjoy it. Uh, Game profiles, if programming is not that much good. Okay, what is the scope of internships in game dev in India? Rishabh, there's a lot of companies hire interns as well. As long as you have the right skill set, I feel like there is a lot of scope. Um, Problem is people think that there isn't good scope for game development in India. You'd be surprised how many game companies there are. They might not be very popular, they might not be very big. Typically, companies are like, 20 people, 25, 30 people, and these are actually very good game companies making good games. So, just that they're not popular in mainstream media. So, you might not know about them, but doing your background research is very important when it comes down to how much or which kind of companies you want to apply for. Can a person using GIMP software cope up with Adobe Photoshop and month? Sudesh, your question regarding GIMP and Adobe, I'm not the best person since I'm more technically oriented. I think you can. GIMP alone is a pretty powerful tool as well. So pretty sure you can if you put your head down and just hammer through, you'll be able to do that. When is your next live stream gonna happen? As of now, I don't think there is a plan for doing a next live stream. But yeah, if you are interested in those, just go ahead to our website and hit the apply button and express your interest in the game development version of the course. So at least when we're doing these game development oriented trainings slash sessions, announcements, and anything, you usually send out to the people who have expressed interest, so you'll know about them. Uh, just going through some last questions and then we can wrap it up. Okay. So, Kanishka asked, which technology will you be using to teach real-time multiplayer? Will the server side be written from scratch? Yes, absolutely. You will be learning the fundamentals of JavaScript and actually building a simple Node.js server as well. That's all gonna be covered. So we don't expect you to know any JavaScript before, and that's why our coding challenge does not include anything JavaScript oriented. You just need to have a basic understanding of what servers are and what does it mean, in context of multiplayer. Um, and that's pretty much it. Technology will be used for teaching real-time multiplayer. I'm not sure I understand. Like I said, servers would be Node.js and client side would be Unity. Uh, if you have anything more specific that you wanted to ask, just feel free to leave that in the comments. Uh, Rajat, you're welcome. Uh, Rishabh, what's the upfront fee for the full stack game dev course? Rishabh, all those details are already on our website, so would encourage you to check out because it shows you all the breakdown and whatnot and compares you from both the upfront as well as the income share one that I mentioned. So all of those details are there. What engine should be used? Purely up to you. All engines are good, fairly good, and the whole idea of an engine is that you should be comfortable in getting your games up and running. Beyond that, they don't really serve too much purpose. So, whichever engine you are comfortable with, I would recommend go with that because if you have solid skill set, you can always pick up a new engine in a relatively short amount of time. Cool. So that looks like that covers most of the questions. Um, yeah. So I think we're just about hitting an hour as well. So let's wrap it up today. Feel free to drop any questions or follow up that you might have to admissions@outscale.com. And thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate everyone taking out the time. And yeah, good luck.